Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at Promos and Cassandra, the right excellent and famous history of, divided into two comical discourses. So it's split into two parts. Precisely how it was first presented is an interesting question. It's dates from the latest 1578, but it's probably a few years earlier than that. 1578 is when it was printed, so it seems to exist prior to that at some point, and it is by George Whetstone, and it is a text that does have some problematic elements. I think I'll just say that it does involve discussions of problems of involving sexual violence and exploitation to be warned about as we go forward. Before we go into it, we have to, of course, introduce all these wonderful people in the room who are going to be reading parts. So reading Promos today will be...
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian. I'm in Hull.
Reading the Mayor and Cassandra today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I do not have a sense of impending doom.
Excellent. Reading Lamia today is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading the Sheriff and Andrugio is...
Hi, Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Rosko and Gripax today is...
Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm in the northwestern United States.
Reading Dalia, Rapax and Hangman today is...
Rachael Nicole, actor in New Jersey.
And reading Phallax today is...
Lois, based in London.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions. I'm also going to read... there's a lot of introductory material to the printing of this, which we're mostly not going to look at today. We might look at towards the end, because it actually... it sort of foreshadows some things that we might want to discuss towards the end of reading the play. But there's a note of the printer to the reader, which I think sums up, actually, the problems we face doing these sessions full stop. So I quite like to read it out now. Gentle reader... This labour of Master Whetstone's came into my hands in his first copy, whose leisure was so little, being then ready to depart his country, that he had no time to work it anew, nor give it apt instructions to print so difficult a work, being full of variety, both matter, speech, and verse, for that every sundry actor hath in all these a sundry grace. So that if I commit an error without blaming the author, amend my amiss, and if by chance thou light of some speech that seemeth dark, consider of it with judgment before thou condemn the work. For in many places he is driven both to praise and blame with one breath, which in reading will seem hard, and in action appear plain. Using this courtesy, I hold my pains well satisfied and Master Whetstone uninjured, and for my own part I will not fail to procure such books as may profit thee with delight. So yeah, that sort of highlights the general problem of trying to read plays rather than doing them. Things are really unclear sometimes what's going on from reading it, whereas if you've got it on its feet, it'll all become very clear. In the same way as I transposed a word midway through reading that, sometimes what we read out isn't exactly right, though we hope to be moderately in the right ballpark. I did a slightly rushed job in tidying up the text we have here. There may be some errors. I suspect many of the errors will be authentic errors in the way that the printing comes about, and hopefully all things will become clear. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into the history of Promos and Cassandra, Part 1, Act 1, Scene 1, and we have on stage Promos, Mayor, Sheriff, Shreve, Swordbearer, one with a bunch of keys, and Phallax, Promos, Man.
You officers, which now in Iulio stay, know you our liege, the King of Hungary, sent me, Promos, to join with you in sway, that still we may to justice have an eye. And now to show my rule and power at large, attentively, his letters patents here. Phallax, read out my sovereign's charge.
As you command, I will. Give heedful ear.
And Phallax Phallax will read out the next speech, by the way. Phallax readeth the king's letters patents, which must be fair written in parchment, with some great counterfeit zeal. So, Phallax, if you could read the next speech, please.
Lo, here you see what is our sovereign's will. Lo, bear his wish, that right, not might, bear sway. Lo, here is care to weed from good the ill, to scourge the whites, good laws that disobey. Such zeal he bears unto the commonweal. How so he bids the ignorant to save, as he commands the lewd do rigor feel. Such is his wish, such is my will to have. And such a judge here Promos vows to be. I think this is Promos's lines, actually.
Yeah, no, okay, I apologise. I just second-guessed myself. I think what happens is the King's Letters Patents is perhaps a bit of text we don't have.
Yeah, it's a bit of paper that was separate from the rest that someone hands him, so he doesn't have to memorize it.
So I apologise, Promos. The script is entirely right. You do read what is following. So I'll ask Promos to start that speech again. I apologise. That is me making a terrible mistake.
And I thought I just got out of this one.
Yeah. So
I was really, really enjoying Lois's rendition of it.
Well, we'll start that again.
Okay. Lo, here you see what is our sovereign's will. Lo, bear his wish that right not might bear sway. Lo, hear his care to weed from good the ill, to scourge the whites' good laws that disobey. Such zeal he bears unto the commonweal, how so he bids the ignorant to save. As he commands, the lewd do rigor feel. Such is his wish, such is my will to have. And such a judge here Promos vows to be. No willful wrong, sharp punishment shall miss. The simple thrall shall be judged with mercy. Each shall be doomed, even as his merit is. Love shall not stay. Love, hate, and gain, the causes of injustice, nor hate revenge procure. Ne yet shall coin corrupt or fester wrong. I do protest, whilst that my charge endure, for friend nor foe to sing a partial song. Thus have you heard how my commission goes. He absent, I present our sovereign still. It answers then, each one his duty shows, to me as him, what I command and will.
Worthy deputy, at thy charge we joy. We do submit ourselves to work thy hest. Receive the sword of justice to destroy the wicked imps and to defend the rest.
Our city keys take wish, Lieutenant, here. We do commit our safety to thy head. Thy wise foresight will keep us void of fear, yet will we be assistant still at need.
Both sword and keys unto my prince's use I do receive and gladly take my charge. It resteth now for to reform abuse. We point a time of council more at large, to treat of which a while we will depart.
To work your will we yield a willing heart.
So says they all, and they exit. Part 1, Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Lamia, a courtesan, who enters singing. You don't have to sing.
Thank you, Rob. All a flaunt now vaunt it. Brave wench, cast away care. With lays of love chant it. For no cost see thou spare. Sith nature hath made thee with beauty most brave, sith fortune doth lade thee with what thou wouldst have, ere pleasure doth fade thee, thyself set to sail, all wantons will trade thee and stoop to thy stale. All a flaunt, ut supra. Young Rufflers maintains thee, defends thee in thine, old Dotterels retains thee, thy beauty so shine. Though many disdains thee, yet none may thee touch. Thus envy refrains thee, thy countenance is such. All a flaunt, ut supra. Triumph, fair Lamia now, thy wanton flag advance. Set forth thyself to bravest show, boast thou of happy chance. Girl, accompt thou thyself the chief of lady pleasure's train. Thy face is fair, thy form content, thy fortunes both dost strain. Even as thou wouldst, thy house doth stand, thy furniture is gay, thy weeds are brave, thy face is fine, and who for this doth pay? Thou thyself know, the rushing youths, ye bathe in wanton bliss. Yea, old and doting fools sometimes do help to pay for this. Free cost between them both I have, all this for my behoof. I am the stern, it guides their thoughts. Look what I like, they love. Few of them stir that I bid stay. If I bid go, they fly. If I on foe pursue revenge, alarm 100 cry. The bravest I their hearts, their hands, their purses hold at will, joined with the credit of the best to bolster me in ill. But see when as my trusty man doth run, what news brings he?
And Act 1, Scene 3, enter Rosko, Lamia's man, to Lamia.
Sorry. Good people, did none of you my mistress Lamia see?
Rosko, what news, that in such haste you come blowing?
Mistress, you must shut up your shops and leave your occupying.
What so they be, foolish knave? Tell me true.
Oh, ill for 30 besides you.
For me, good fellow? I pray thee, why so?
Be patient, mistress, and you shall know.
Go to, say on.
Mary, right now at the sessions I was, and 30 must go to a trussum corde, go. Among the which I weep to show, alas.
Why, what's the matter, man?
Oh, Andrugio, for loving too kindly, must lose his head, and his sweetheart must we are the shameful weeds, ordained for dames that fall through fleshly deeds.
Is this offence in question come again? Tell no more. 'Tis time this tale were done. See, how soon my triumph turns to pain.
Mistress, you promised to be quiet. For God's sake, for your own sake, be so.
Alas, poor Rosko, our dainty diet, our bravery and all we must forego.
I am sorry.
Yea, but out, alas, sorrow will not serve. Rosko, thou must needs provide thee elsewhere. My gains are past. Yea, I myself might starve, save that I did provide for a dear year.
They reward fair their harvest in the stack when winter comes that bid their servants pack. Alas, mistress, if you turn me off now, better than a rogue none will me allow.
Thou shalt have a passport.
Yea, but after what sort?
Why, that thou wert my man.
Oh, the judge shall show the favor to let one thief bail another. Tush, I know, ere long you will slip away, as you for yourself must seek some testimony of your good life.
Never fear. Honestly, Lamia now means to live, even till she die.
As jump as apes in the view of nuts to dance, kite will to kind of custom or by chance. Well, how so you stand upon this holy point, for the thing you know, you will jeopard a joint.
Admit I would, my hazard were in vain.
Perhaps I know, to turn the same to gain.
Thou comforts me, good Rosko, tell me how.
You will be honest, 'twere sin to hinder you.
I did but jest, good sweet servant, tell me.
Sweet servant now, and late pack, sir, God be with ye.
Tush, to try thy unwillingness, I did but jest.
And I do but try how long you would be honest.
I thought thy talk was too sweet to be true.
Yea, but meant yon to bid honestly, but mean you to bid honesty adieu.
No, I did so long since, but enforced by need. To bid him welcome home again, I was decreed.
Very good, mistress. I know your mind. And for your ease, this remedy I find. Prying abroad for playfellows and such for you, mistress, I heard of one Phallax, a man esteemed of Promos very much, of whose nature I was so bold to ask. And I smelt he loved laced mutton well.
And what of this?
Marry, of this, if you the way can tell, to towel him home, he of you will be fain, whose countenance will so excuse your faults, as none for life dare of your life complain.
A good device. God grant us good success. But I pray thee, what trade doth he profess?
He is a paltry pettifogger.
All the better. Suspicion will be the less. Well, go thy ways, and if thou him espy, tell him from me that I a cause or two would put to him at leisure willingly.
Her case is so common that small pleading will serve. I go, nay, run your commandment to observe.
Ay me, alas, lest Phallax help, poor wench, undone am I. My foes now in the wind will lie to work my open shame. Now envious eyes will pry abroad, offenders to entrap. Of force now Lamia must be chased, to shun a more mishap. And wanton girl, how wilt thou shift for garments fine and gay? For dainty fare can cross content. Who shall thy house rent pay? And that delights thee most of all, thou must thy dalliance leave. And can then the force of law or death thy mind of love bereave? In good faith, know, the wight that once hath taste the fruits of love, until her dying day will long, Sir Chaucer's jest to prove.
And scene 4, Dalia, Lamia's maid.
Forsooth, mistress, your thrall stays for you at home.
Were you born in a mill, Kirtle? You prate so high.
The gentleman that came the last day with Captain Pry.
What, young Hippolyta?
Even he?
Lest he be gone, home high. And will Dalia pop him in the nether room, and keep the falling door closed till I come, and tell my thrall his fortune will not stay?
Will you what else?
Prating vixen away. Gallants adieu. I venture must Hippolyto to see. He is both young and wealthy yet, the better spoil for me. My hazard for his sake, I true, shall make him pray and pay. He shall prank me in my plumes, and deck me brave and gay. Of courtesy, I pray you yet, if Phallax come this way, report to put a case with him, here Lamia long did stay.
And exit Lamia, and there we'll pause at the end of Act 1. We've had effectively 2 scenes, initially with Promos, who's getting effectively the keys of the city. Let's see if he uses his power wisely. And Lamia, a courtesan who has had some bad news about what's going on with her particular line of business. Thoughts from the room about where we're at with this? Helen?
Yeah, going back, I'm afraid, right to the very beginning. We got a problem, obviously, for production in that we haven't got the letters patent. I mean, one could mock them up, but why would one? It could be that Phallax can actually make that speech down to "Thus have you heard," where Promos takes it up. So Phallax is reading this prepared thing, and Promos has said, "There you go, you've heard it." I mean, I don't think that's the way it was originally intended, but it could be a way we could do it.
Lois?
Yeah, we might fake it that way, but I mean, you would know, I don't, but wouldn't a letters patent normally begin something like, to our trusty and well-beloved? This,
Yeah. We greet you well. Yes. know by
Let me
these
explain.
presents.
May I explain the plot in legalese? Which is essentially, that's sort of the problem, is that's explaining what's happening in the play happens in this speech that we don't have.
Yes, here is the plot. Oh, we seem to be missing it.
We left it at home, and because George Whetstone went on holiday when he handed over his prompt copy to the printer, it's not included. Alan?
I think we would have to mock up something if we were going to take this further. And basically the way it's reading from the reactions to it since is basically Promos has been sent in there to clean up the moral morass.
Oh, absolutely, yes. He's the new broom. He's there to do all the sweeping.
Get rid of all these whores and rogues and villains and other assorted ne'er-do-wells, and probably at the same time extort as much money as you can for the emperor.
Which then leads us straight into one of the people who that decree will impact directly. Eric?
I was going to say, it seems to pick up from like where Glass of Government like leaves us, where you've got the this whole thing of like, yes, we must kick out all the we must shut down all the brothels and so on, and it's like, that's not going to happen, is it? Or they're just going to come back but later.
And Eric gains 10 points for correctly identifying one of the influences on this text. Well done, Eric. You wondered whether it was going to be worth your while reading Glass of Government, but no. Lo, it has paid off.
I actually enjoyed Glass of Government, except maybe like the compendious speeches,
No, you remembered the plot. That's all you needed. That's all you needed to win points. And what do points mean? Absolutely nothing in this context.
Prizes!
Right, other thoughts in the room, because I've gone off on a tangent. Rachael.
No, I was just gonna say, for that part that didn't get put into the book, I wonder, like, if it had been, if it would just be labeled as a prologue or something in the, stage of whatever stage. What do you call it? Where it lists all the people. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, the logic for why such a document doesn't end up here is that it's effectively a prop, and that's where the text lives, and so the prop didn't get handed over to the printer, or the printer didn't figure out where it was supposed to go. It just went, "What's this for?" Where the question of the auspices of the original production, which is something we may discuss another time. Lois, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting bits in that the little thing to the printer from the printer that you read out was the bit about how you may have trouble understanding this, because I think he sometimes praises and blames at the same time, which I take to be something to do with irony and the difficulty of getting it, or of places where somebody says something that you're not in fact meant to take straightforwardly, like that bit where Lamia apparently is telling her servant that she's planning to go straight and be an honest woman, and he doesn't really quite believe it, but and then eventually says, I think I can see a way out of this, and then she says, oh well, in that case tell me, and he says, oh, I didn't realize you meant, I mean, they're both in fact being, I think, ironic with each other, but it's not terribly easy to get when you're just looking at it.
Yes, the level to what, especially Lamia, considering the way the character is constructed, and who they're talking to, because of course there's some interaction with the audience as well. Rosko effectively does the hello boys and girls, have you seen Lamia? Oh, she's behind you. Oh, thank you. Almost style. So it's very direct as well. So there's all sorts of potential layers going on here. Other thoughts before we move into Act 2? Eric.
I was going to hear what I just said, because cat.
There was a cat. Yes.
I was going to say there was a line, I think it was in the song, it was in the speaking, where Lamia goes, girl, accompany thou thyself the chief of Lady Pleasure's train. And I was thinking it sounds very, very modern, like sort of, hey girl, kind of that kind of energy of I'm the boss kind of myself. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, because there was a moment of trying to unpack that. Is she talking to somebody else, or is she talking about herself as girl? It seemed that she's talking about herself, or it seemed to me that that's how it was. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing about how she's addressing those things. Helen, then Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was rather struck by the way we rushed into Fortinas for Lamia. I haven't seen Fortinas in a few weeks.
Yeah,
nice to see them back again. But
you can tell we're in the 1570s, can't you?
Yeah. But it's interesting that Lamia gets the Fortinas and Promos gets the pentameters.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, just speaking to what Helen was just saying, I was really interested in the fact that Lamia seems to be a very wealthy, almost like a very wealthy courtesan. And it's the first time I've come across a character like that, because she has like two servants, not just Rosko, but Dalia as well. And I was thinking to myself, why would she leave her life of debauchery when she can continue to make so much money that she can afford two servants?
Well, that's the pressures being put on by Promos there. You know, it's all gonna have to go underground or find an alternative money stream because the state's gonna clamp down hard. So yeah, that's sort of the debate that they'll be having here is that, you know, what do they do? What do they go straight, or do they find a way of keeping it under the table? Helen, then Lynn.
Yeah, I got the impression that actually Lamia was possibly worked herself, but she certainly had staff. Yeah. I was trying to find a politer way of saying than stable. I got the impression that she was the mistress of a considerable establishment, a bordello. That's what I'm after, a bordello.
A madam.
Yeah, she runs.
Oh yes, she's definitely a madam. Yeah. That doesn't mean she doesn't work herself.
Lynn.
Yeah, there's a character like her in Afra Ben's help me out.
Rover.
The Rover, yes. Yes. Just some very beautiful, very reputable, just highly successful at her trade. A number of wealthy lovers, or a series of wealthy lovers who are very generous. So it's interesting to see that kind of character this early in the period, but it was definitely, and it was an Italian thing. Professional sex workers who were quite successful and lived large because they lived for the moment. She probably would be in less peril if she'd lived more modestly as the money was coming in, but that's not what you do.
And yes, just to return us briefly to Eric said earlier, Glass of Government. You know, the mistress of the house is also called Lamia in that play. And in that play, there is. It's almost actually like we're actually explicitly going into the next part of the story for Glass of Government, actually, because there's a whole mentioning at the end of the play about getting rid of all the houses of ill repute, and then you don't see it, and it's quite disappointing in Glass of Government. You don't actually get to the point where you're going, oh, this is quite interesting, and then it doesn't happen. So it's almost like that's being deliberately picked up here. Rachael, then Eric, and then we do need to move on.
No, I was gonna say about this is much more modern, but like that book Colette, I wonder if it could be something like that. Like maybe she's not I mean, if she's a madame, she's probably older, so maybe she might be in the process of retiring, sort of semi-retirement.
Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Lamia is the courtesan in Glass of Government, and the madam is Pandrina, I think. That we were. I just remember this because Alex was doing such a good impression. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the way she, if she is talking about herself when she's saying "girl," it's a really interesting thing. Or is she talking about someone who's under her at those moments? I'm slightly unclear on that. which then would define that relationship better. Because again, we're not 100% certain how many people might be also additionally on stage at any time. Anyway, we're going to move on into Act 2 because we'll gain some more data as the plot advances. We've heard the name of Andrugio. We're going to be meeting him in a moment. But first, we're going to encounter Cassandra, a maiden in Act 2, Scene 1.
I'm an unhappy wench that I must live the day, to see Andrugio timeless die, my brother and my stay. The only mean, God wot, that should our house advance, who in the hope of his good hap must die through wanton chance. Oh, blind affection and love, whose torments none can tell, yet wantons will hide fire and frost, yea, hazard death, nay hell. To taste thy sour sweet fruits, digested still with care, foul full thee love, thy lightning choice hath blasted my welfare. Thou firest affection first within my brother's breast. Thou madest Polina grant him erst, even when what he would request. Thou madest him crave and have a proof of Venus made, for which foul actors he is adjudged, ere long to lose his head. The law is so severe in scourging fleshly sin, as marriage to work after men's doth seldom favour win. As law first is made of zeal, but rested much amiss. Faults should be measured by desert, but all is one in this. The lecher fired with lust is punished no more than when he fell through force of love, whose marriage solves his sore. So that poor I despair of my Andrugio's. Oh, would my days might end with his, for to appease my strife.
Act 2, Scene 2. Andrugio's imprisoned to Cassandra.
My good sister Cassandra,
Who calleth Cassandra?
thy woeful brother Andrugio.
Andrugio, oh dismal day, what griefs to me assail! Condemned to wretch to see thee there, fast wretched now in jail. Now haps thy wits were witched so, yet ye knowing death was meed, thou wouldst commit to stay us both this vile lascivious deed.
O good Cassandra, leave to check, and chide me thrall therefore. If late repentance wrought me help, I would so do no more. But out, alas, I wretch too late, do sorrow my amiss. Unless Lord Promise grant me grace, in vain is hate hardly wist. Wherefore, sweet sister, whilst in hope my damned life yet were, assault his heart in my behalf with battering tire of tears. If thou by suit dost save my life, it both our joys will be. If not, it may suffice thou soughtest to set thy brother free. Wherefore speed to prorogue my days, tomorrow else I die.
I will not fail to plead and pray to purchase the mercy. Farewell a while, God grant me well to speed.
Sister, adieu, till thy return I live tween hope and breed.
Oh, happy time, see where Lord Promos comes. Now, tongue, address thyself, my mind to ray, and yet least haste work waste. I hold it best, in covert for some advantage to stay.
Act 2, Scene 3. Promos enters with the sheriff and their officers.
'Tis strange to think what swarms of unthrifts live within this town, by rapine, spoil, and theft. That were it not that justice oft then grieve, the just man's goods by rufflers should be reft. At this our size are 30 judged to die, whose falls I see their fellows smallly fear. So that the way is by severity, such wicked weeds even by the roots to tear. Wherefore, Shreve, execute with steady pace the damned wights, cut off their hope of grace.
It shall be done.
Oh, cruel words, they make my heart to bleed. Now, I must this dome seek to revoke, least grace come short when starved is the steed.
She, kneeling, speaks to Promos.
Most mighty lord and worthy judge, thy judgment hard sharp abate. Veil thou thine ears to hear the plaint the wretched I relate. Behold the woeful sister here of poor Andrugio, whom though that law awardeth death, yet mercy do him show. Weigh his young years the force of love which forceth his amiss. Weigh that marriage works amends for what committed is. He hath defiled no nuptial bed, nor forced rape hath moved. He fell through love, who never meant but wive he loved. And wantons sure to keep in awe these statutes first were made, or none but lustful lecherous should with rigorous law be paid. And yet to add intent thereto is far from my pretence. I sue with tears to win him grace that sorrows his offence. Wherefore herein, renowned lord, justice with pity pays, which two in equal balance weighed, to heaven your fame will raise.
Cassandra, leave off thy bootless suit. By law he hath been tried. Law found his fault. Law judged him death.
Yet this may be replied, that a law a mischief oft permits to keep due form of law, that law small faults with greatest dooms to keep men still in acts, yet kings or such as execute regal authority, if men's be made, may overrule the force of law with mercy. Here is no willful murder wrought, which asketh blood again. Andrugio's fault may valued be, marriage wipes out his stain.
Fair dame, I see the natural zeal thou bear'st to Andrugio, and for thy sake, not his desert, this favour will I show. I will reprieve him yet a while, and on the matter pause. Tomorrow you shall license have afresh to plead his cause. Shreve, execute my charge, but stay Andrugio, until that you in this behalf more of my pleasure know.
I will perform your will.
O most worthy magistrate, myself thy thrall I find, even for this little lightning hope, in which at thy hands I find. Now will I go and comfort him, which hangs twixt death and life.
And exit Cassandra.
Happy is the man that enjoys the love of such a wife. I do protest, her modest words hath wrought in me amaze. Though she be fair, she is not decked with garish shows for gaze. Her beauty lures, her looks cut off on suits with chaste disdain. O God, I feel a sudden change that doth my freedom chain. What didst thou say? Fie, Promos, fie, of her avoid the thought. And so I will. My other cares will cure what love hath wrought. Come, away.
And we'll pause there at the end of the scene. Cassandra, sister to Andrugio. Andrugio has been caught with having had some fun times with Paulina, and is condemned to death by the new incoming lord there. And Cassandra asks for justice, and Promos has some improper thoughts. Alan.
I think you meant Lamia rather than...
No.
Paulina. Lamia knows him, and may be involved in the process, but no, it's Paulina has granted him. We haven't met her yet.
That's why I'm confused.
Cassandra mentioned it. Cassandra mentioned it. It's been mentioned. You haven't visually seen it. Lynn.
Yeah, because Cassandra says, they could just get married and then everything would be fine. But Promos doesn't seem to address that possible solution. So, and if it had been a courtesan, Cassandra would probably not have suggested that they get married.
So it just looks like some young people just got a little over enthusiastic, and this is clearly a miscarriage of justice. Helen.
What I loved was that as soon as he heard Cassandra's 14ers, Promos abandons the iambic pentameter and dives himself into Fortinas. Which
Well, who
shows
wouldn't?
the influence she has on him.
Yeah, that's such a nice observation.
Well, Fortinas are cool. We all know this.
If you've got the breath control, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of the things we really need to do is actually do some proper workshops and playing around with Fortinas, because they're a really interesting form. Elizabeth and Eric.
Yeah, I was really stunned by the contrast between Cassandra and Lamia. I think that Cassandra is there to project a much more virtuous woman. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. And yeah, the fact that they're contrasted so directly is surely deliberate. Absolutely. Eric.
There was one line, I can't remember which part. It was some sort of rhyme that was mead with head, and I was like, no, I must not resist the rhyme, but also I must resist the rhyme because that's the word. And it was so weird. But yeah, I was gonna say that the rhyme makes it kind of hard to sort of what's it called? Take it a bit seriously. At least, it's kind of because it just bounces along kind of thing. I don't know, maybe it's just me.
It definitely is a problem in the first read of anything. I think once you it's the kind of problem that everyone says about plays that have lots of rhyming in it, and usually plays with Fortinas as well, is that when you do an initial look, it all just feels a bit too ti-dum. But it is the kind of thing that to a degree disappears in rehearsal and performance. But it is, as ever, something that should be noted as a possible pitfall, something that needs work for performance. Other thoughts before we move on? Eric?
I was not going to mention this, but I was going to say about, how do you call it? I was going to mention the Wars of Cyrus that we did last week, because Promos is like, oh yeah, I'm totally not going to, change my mind. I'm never going to change my mind. And then suddenly he meets Cassandra, which is very sort of Araspis of him. Although I don't know if he would go that far. He seems a bit more reserved, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me,
Well, let's find out where Promos goes with this thought that has crept up there. I'm sure it'll all be fine. Part 1, Act 2, Scene 4. So we move on and we meet some other characters. Phallax, Promos Officer. We also have Gripax and Rapax promoters. So these may have already been on, having come in with Promos earlier, and that this is a continuation, effectively, of what we've just had.
My trusty friends, about your business straight, with simple shows your subtle meanings bait. Promote all faults up into my office, then turn me loose, the offender is to fleece.
To find lawbreakers, let me alone. I have eyes, will look into a millstone.
God a mercy, Gripax.
And I am so subtle-sighted, I trow, as I the very thoughts of men do now.
Faith, Rapax, what thought thy wife when she, to lie with the priest, by night stole from thee?
Marry, she knew you and I were at square, and lest we fell to blows, she did prepare to arm my head to match thy horned brow.
Go, and a knave with thee.
I stay for you.
No harm is done. Here is but blow for blow. Birds of a feather best fly together. Then, like partners, about your market go. Marrows, adieu. God send you fair weather.
Fare you well. For us take no care. With us this broad speech seldom breedeth square.
And they exit, leaving Phallax.
Marry, sir, welfare in office, whatsoever it be, the very countenance is great, though slender be the sea. I thank my good Lord Promos now, I am an officer made. In sooth, more by hap than desert, in secret be it said. No force for that, each shift for one, for Phallax will do so. Welfare ahead can take his time, nay, watch for time, I trow. I smile to think of my fell ways, how some brave it, some wait, and think reward their service just with offered shifts will bait, when they, poor souls, in troth do fall a mile upon account. For flattery and fervent pleasing are means to make men mount. I speak on proof. Lord Promos, I have pleased many a day, yet am I neither learned, true, nor honest anyway. What skills for that? By wit and wile I have an office got, by force whereof every license, warrant, patent, passport, lease, fine, fee, etc., pass and repass through Phallax hands. Dishonored persons bribe me well to escape from justice bands, and wealthy churls for to promote I now have set a work such hungry lads as soon will smell where statute breakers lurk, and if they come within our grip, we mean to stripe them so, as if they scape from open shame, their bags with us shall go. And trust me this, we officers of this mild mold are wrought, agree with us, and sure your shame by us shall not be sought. But soft a while, I see my lord. What makes him lour so? I will intrude into his sight, perhaps his grief to know.
And Act 2, Scene 4, enter Promos.
Well met, Phallax. I long have wished to show a cause to thee, which none but I yet know.
Say on, my lord. A happy man were I, if any way your wish I could supply.
Fain would I speak, but oh, a chilling fear, the case is such, makes me from speech forbear.
Oh, these words, my lord, whomever have been just, now makes me think that you my truth mistrust. But cease suspect, my will with yours shall agree, whatso or against whom your dealing be.
Against a wight of small account it is, and yet I fear I shall my purpose miss.
Fear not, my lord, the old proverb doth say, faint hearts doth steal fair ladies seld away.
Fair ladies, oh, no, lady is my love, and yet they sure as coy as they will prove.
I thought as much, love did torment you so. But what is she that dare say Promos no?
Do what one can, fire will break forth, I see. My words unwares hath shown what grieveth me. My wound is such as love must be my leech, which cure will bring gravity in speech. For what may be a folly of more note than for to see a man greybeard to dote?
No, my lord, amor omnia vincit, and Ovid saith forma numen habet, and for to prove love's service seems the wise, set Solomon and Samson before your eyes. For wit and strength who won the chiefest prize, and both lived by the laws love did devise, which proves in love a certain Godhead lies, and God's rule yearly by wisdom from the skies, whose wills, think I, are wrought best by the wise.
Indeed, divine, I think love's working is, from reason's use in that my senses swerve, in pleasure, pain, in pain I find a bliss. On woe I feed, in sight of food I starve. These strange effects by love are lodged in me, my thoughts are bound, yet I myself am free.
Well, my good lord, I ask with pardon sought, who she may be that hath your thraldom wrought.
The example is such as I sigh to show. Sister she is to damned Andrugio.
All the better for you the game doth go. The proverb saith that kit will unto kine. If it be true, this comfort then I find. Cassandra's flesh is as her brother's frail. Then will she stoop in chief when lords assail.
The contrary, through fear doth work my pain. For in her face such modesty doth reign as cuts of loving suits with chaste disdain.
What love will not, necessity shall gain. Her brother's life will make her glad and fain.
What? Is it best Andrugio free to set, ere I am sure his sister's love to get?
Oh, my loving lord, your servant means not so. But if you will, elsewhere in secret go, to work your will assist I hope to show.
With right good will. For such my sickness is, as I shall die if her good will I miss.
Yeah, this is a cynical world, isn't it? It's really interesting. We have the two promoters who are doing banter, and then Phallax is that sort of poacher turned gamekeeper who's still really a poacher figure, who's thoroughly disreputable. Not suggesting that government functions in this way at all with this sort of revolving door policy. And then Promos is encouraged in his thoughts here by Phallax, who is forming almost acting almost in a vice-like tradition here, but not quite so explicitly. I mean, he's very much more of the play world than say some vices sometimes are, where they feel like they've got more of one foot in a sort of outside convention, whereas he does feel like he is part of the play world in a total way. Yes, he talks to the audience, but then so does everybody else. He's really interesting. Rachael.
No, because Promos is a judge. That Phallax, this sort of plot reminds me of what we had in The Virtuous and Godly Susanna, where we had this devil's vice character's son, instigating people and insinuating themselves with the law, or these people who execute the law.
We've had promoter type figures like this before. So there's also a sort of a bit Appius and Virginia as well. Actually, there's a little hints of there. Alan.
I must admit, I enjoyed Ronnie and Reggie, the brokers' men.
Yeah, it does start with very much, that they have bands.
Yeah, I mean, you could see them sharp suit, white shirt, black tie.
Other thoughts, Lynn?
Yep, my understanding of Promos keeps shifting. When they first give him the keys to the city, you get the feeling he has a reputation for being very just and upright and leading the right kind of life. But then he falls for Cassandra right away. But he says, oh, wow, it would be cool to be married to her. But then I didn't realize until he says something about being a graybeard that there's a hint that he's significantly older than she is. So that's a little creepy. And then when Phallax is saying, oh, you can just use her relationship with her brother as a to coerce her, he doesn't say no, I don't want that. I want a legitimate relationship with her. He also seems to be a poor judge of character, or he picks interesting people for friends. So it's kind of hard to know where to have him.
Yeah, this text is throwing all sorts of interesting possible layers here, especially as Lois was talking earlier about, what do people mean at certain points? Is irony being in play? I don't think in the sequence beyond Phallax that it necessarily is. But yeah, what's going on with these people? Elizabeth and Helen.
Yeah, I was just speaking to what Helen was saying last time about the rhyming structure and the language. I was quite surprised by the rhyming couplets and the rhyming triplets between Promos and Phallax. And I felt that those gave us a weight to what they were saying, that there was a sinister quality to their conversation.
That one's driving into the other, and that they're sort of ending up in symphony, as it were. Yes, Helen.
I've got an enormous amount, which I'm not proposing to talk about here, on the subject of the economies of law enforcement in Elizabethan England. but I can assure you that bells are ringing all over the place. You know, I mean, trust me, this is not an invented world, I think is the best I can say here. We've got a lot that a lot of people would recognize.
Yes, that this...
And a lot of it ends up in Star Chamber.
That yes, this feels like it's a semi-satirical world, and thereunto many a trap is laid. We shall see where it's going to go. We have a few more scenes from this act, which effectively each act is a sort of continuing unit of action. Yes, the stage has been cleared, but in a sense, the thought is continuing from the scenes that we've already had this act, as Act 2, Scene 5, The Hangman, with a great many ropes about his neck, enters.
The wind is ill, blows no man's gain. For cold I need not care. Here is 29 suits of apparel for my share, and some byre lady very good, for so standeth the case, as neither gentleman nor other lord Promos showeth grace. But I marvel much, poor slaves, that they are hanged so soon. They were wont to stay a day or two, now scarce an afternoon. All the better for the hangman, high pardons dreaded sore. Woodcutters save, whose clothes are good, I never feared the poor. Let me see, I must be dapper in this my faculty. Here are new ropes. How are my knots, I say at first, slippery? At fast or loose with my Egyptian, I mean to have a cast. 10 to 1 I read his fortune by the merry mass fast.
Oh, I haven't put out a sergeant. Away, what a stir is this to see men go to hanging.
Hark, goodbye. I must be gone, the prisoners are a-coming.
And exit the hangman. Enter the prisoners for Act 2, Scene 6. We've got 6 prisoners bound with cords, 2 hacksters, 1 woman, 1 like Egyptian, the rest poor rogues, a preacher with other officers. And they sing, I'll say... Alan, could you be all of them singing? Because I haven't chosen anyone to do the all singing.
With heart and voice to thee, O Lord, at latter gasp for grace we cry. Unto our suits, good God, accord, but thus appeal to thy mercy. Forsake us not in this distress, which unto thee our sins confess. Forsake us not in this distress, which unto thee our sins confess.
And yes, just going to pause there while I pass around some parts, because for some reason I haven't actually. I've got this confused with tomorrow, so this is going well. So as it's all just random people, I'll say Alan, if you can be first hackster, Eric, second hackster, Lois can be woman, Elizabeth, if you could be catchpole, Lynn, you can be preacher, Rachael, you can be a rogue. Who's left? Helen, you can be an officer. Okay, let's go through this cheerful, happy scene.
All sorts of men beware by us, whom present death assaults. Look in your conscience what you find, and sorrow for your faults. Example take by our fresh harms. See here the fruits of pride. I, for my part, deserve a death. Long ere my theft was spied. O careless youth, lead awry with every pleasing toy. Note well my words, they are of worth, the cause through my annoy. Shun to be pranked in peacock's plumes, for gaze which only are. Hate the dice, even as the devil, of wanton dames beware. I was enticed by lawless men's on thievish spoils to feed, and nuzzled once in wicked deeds, I feared not to offend. From bad to worst, and worst I fell. I would at leisure mend, but oh, presuming overmuch, still escape in hope. My faults were found, and I adjudged to totter in a rope. To which I go with these my mates, likewise for breach of laws, for murder some, for thievery some, and some for little cause.
Where are the friend of quarreling, the thirst spoil of no man's breaths? Blood art blood, I shedding blood, untimely catch ye death.
Maids and women, shun pride and sloth, the roots of every vice. My death ere long will show their ends. God grant it make you wise.
How now, Egyptian? All a mort knave, for want of company? Be crusty, man. The hangman straight will read fortunes with thee.
With this thy scoffing speech, good friend, offend him not. His faults are scourged, thine scape perhaps that do deserve his lot.
Jesus save me, I am cast for a purse with 3 halfpence.
Dispatch, prating knave, and be hanged. Yet we were jogging hence.
And they leisurely depart, singing, the preacher whispering some one or other of the prisoners still in their care. Alan, if you could sing us off, please.
Our secret thoughts thou Christus know, whom the world doth hate in thrall. Yet hope we that thou wilt not so, on whom alone we thus do call. Forsake us not in this distress, which unto thee our sins confess. Forsake us not in this distress, which unto thee our sins confess.
And they exit. So, mass execution, always nice. If we go by the hangman's number of suits, that's 9 and 20. So that's 29. That's quite a lot of people to kill at the same time. Even at a time when public executions are a thing, you don't, by and large, kill that many people unless you're trying to make one hell of a statement. That's clearly excessive. An interesting couple of scenes there. I like the hangman. The hangman came across very nicely. Any thoughts in the room before we go into Act 3? Eric and then Rachael.
I like the idea that the hangman just comes on going, hi-ho, and off to work we go. So on and so forth.
Swinging 29 ropes. Which actually, that's probably quite weighty, actually. That's quite a lug of stuff. Rachael.
Never mind.
Okay. Elizabeth.
I just thought this scene just added like a really lovely texture to the play. I wasn't expecting it, and I just really like the fact that the hangman gets so much to say. And the hackster, is the hackster the axeman?
No.
It's
a huckster, a peddler.
Oh, a peddler. Okay, cool.
Yes, all these people are the condemned who are, saying, oh, for our terrible crimes, which may or may not be a legitimate calling. If you're going to be executed, maybe you're hoping for mercy at the last moment. So there may be something slightly cynical and performative about what's going on with these characters. I'll go to Alan, then Rachael.
Basically, all of the ones that we've seen there being lined up for the hanging are all relatively low status characters. So it's get the poor to suffer. The rich will get away with murder.
Rachael.
I wonder for the staging of this, because the hangman goes off to the prisoners, if you can have him as their, maybe not as they're speaking, but, they're appraising their clothing or whatever they're wearing, because he gets to keep whatever their goods are, I guess, when they depart.
And of course they're singing, and I really want to know what the tune is. What is this? So forsakers not in this distress, forsakers not. It's and that element is repeated. I'm wondering how that functions. It's a really interesting question, Lynn.
Yes, this certainly does change the texture, but I don't know if lovely is the word I would use. It's creeping me out. It just seems quite morbid, and like piles of ropes to hang people, and the second huckster's like basically got in a bar fight and killed somebody. So yeah, that's not good. But then the rogue says that he's being hanged for stealing a purse with 3 halfpence in it. So, and nobody knows what the woman has done. Pride and sloth is the root of her vice, but is she being executed for prostitution? It's just like, and maybe that's just my modern sensibility, where property crimes are not generally capital crimes in our culture. So that seems to me like really ridiculously harsh. So, but yeah, this seems to me quite creepy and morbid, actually.
It does seem that it's doing something very dark, but it does seem to be. I don't think it is necessarily our modern sense. I think that this is an excessive act. Seems to be signposted all the way through here. That Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite interesting, really. I mean, the hangman does say at the beginning that he's got some very nice suits out of this because, in fact, Promos has been sentencing quite wealthy people as well as the poor ones. So he has had some good clothes. But yeah, it does go all the way down to that poor guy who, of course, he didn't know that the purse had only 3 halfpence in it. Maybe he thought it was going to have a lot more. But still, I think you are meant to feel that this is pretty awful. But that the fact that they sing, it's probably some sort of hymn tune, I would think. It does change the texture. It's like Lamia's song. This thing is sort of like a musical as well. And this is something we don't get at all, obviously, in reading it. And there's probably other music as well at different points, which completely changes the feel of the thing. It's sort of entertaining, this procession of people on their way to the gallows.
Yeah, and it's a question of what the music is. I mean, is it threepenny opera here, or is it something? Is that sort of the tone that it's aiming for? In terms of, or is it something else? Eric, then Elizabeth, then Helen.
I was gonna say, yeah, it depends, because, like, for example, the lyrics make it sound like a sort of, forgive us kind of hymn, very, very somber hymn. But then if you fit it to the music of, like, Hoist the Colors from Pirates of the Caribbean, which is very defiant and very sort of like basically, hoist the colors, yo ho kind of thing, it's the other way. Like, it would flip the scene completely.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just thinking about hanging as the mode of execution, and about the fact that the axe was supposed to be, I think, more for an upper class person. And I also thought that the mode of hanging was interesting because of, as Lois said, that they had some wealthy people in this group of people to be hanged. And it was just very graphic, actually. I thought it's quite a graphic scene. It reminded me a little bit of The Crucible, and just how harsh that the hanging is as a punishment.
And it ups the stakes for the personal drama that we're being given here. We know what's going to the fate of Andrugio would have been. He would have been number 30. Because you want to have a round number for when you organise these executions. But he's been stayed for the moment. Will he go there in the end, Helen?
I think thinking about the justice and the likelihood of this scene, the punishment for felony was hanging. I don't think 3 halfpence, stealing 3 halfpence is a felony. You have to include the cost of the purse, which might have been more than 3 halfpence. I think what we're showing here is that all of these offences are pardonable. Had everyone who committed a felony been hanged in England at this time, the population would have decreased enormously. In fact, there were more pardons than executions, which tends to be what happened when you get a ferocious law. It can't be put into use if it's too ferocious, and that's where they were. So the people who were pardoned were the people who had somebody respectable to sue for a pardon for them. so these are the unfortunates, but also because they didn't have a Cassandra to go and see the judge and ask for a pardon. But on the other hand, Promos has said he's not handing out pardons. Everybody is getting executed. So, yeah, I think this wouldn't have happened. I mean, I've known 9 or 10 people hanged at once. I mean, I don't know much about what happened in London, but certainly I think 14 was the top number in Hull. And they wrote about that for generations afterwards. It was so unusual.
Anyway, we on that cheerful note, let's go into Act 3 and see if the tone changes. Still in Part 1, Act 3, Scene 1, and we have Promos entering alone.
Do what I can, no reason cools desire. The more I strive my fond affects to fame, the hotter, oh, I feel a burning fire within my breast, vain thoughts to forge and frame. O straying effects, a blind affected love from wisdom's paths, which doth astray our wits, which makes us haunt, which our harms doth move. A sickness like the fever eteric fits, with shakes with cold when we do burn like fire. Even so in love we freeze through chilling fear, when as our hearts doth fry with hot desire. What said I? Like to etic fits? Nothing near. In sourest love some sweet is ever sucked. The lover findeth peace in wrangling strife, so that if pain were from his pleasure plucked, there were no heaven like to the lover's life. But why stand I to plead their joy or woe, and rest unsure of her I wish to have? I know not if Cassandra love or no, but yet admit she grant not what I crave. If I be nice to her brother life to give, her brother's life too much will make her yield. A promise then to let her brother live hath force enough to make her fly the field. Thus, though suit fail, necessity shall win. Of lordly rule the conquering power is such, but oh, sweet sight, see where she enters in. Both hope and dread at once my heart doth touch.
Act 3, Scene 2, enter Cassandra, talking to herself.
I see 2 thralls, sweet seems a little joy, for fancy's free Andrugio's breast hath scope. But these detract, doth raise a new annoy. I now will seek to turn to hap his hope. See, as I wished, Lord Promos is in place. Now in my suits God grant I may find grace.
And she, kneeling, speaks to Promos.
Renowned Lord, whilst life in me doth last, in homage bonds I bind myself to thee. And though I did thy goodness lately taste, yet once again on knees I mercy seek, in his behalf that hangs between death and life, who still is pressed, if you the men's do leak, his lawless love to make his lawful wife.
Fair dame, I have well weighed thy suit, and wish to do thee good, but all in vain, all things conclude to have thy brother's blood. The strictness of the law condemns an ignorant abuse, then wilful faults are hardly helped or cloaked with an excuse. And what may be more wilful than a maid to violate?
The force was small when with her will he wretched the conquest gate.
Law ever at the worst doth conster evil intent.
And law even with the worst awards them punishment. And sith that rigorous law adjudged him to die, your glory will be much the more in showing him mercy. The world will think, how thee you do, but grant him grace on cause. And where cause is, there mercy should abate the force of laws.
Cassandra, In thy brother's half thou hast said what may be, and for thy sake it is, if I do set Andrugio free. Short tale to make, thy beauty hath surprised me with love. That maugre wit I turn my thoughts as blind affections move, and quite subdued by Cupid's might needs make me sue for grace to thee, Cassandra, which doth hold my freedom in a lace. Yield to my will, and then command even what thou wilt of me, thy brother's life, and all that else may with thy liking agree.
And may it be as a judge himself, the self same fault should use, for which he domes another's death, no crime without excuse. Renowned lord, you use this speech, I hope your thrall to try, if otherwise my brother's life so dear I will not buy.
Fair dame, my outward looks, my inward thoughts bewray. If you mistrust, to search my heart, would God you had a key.
If that you love, as so you say, the force of love you know, which felt in conscience you should my brother favor show.
In doubtful war, one prisoner still doth set another free.
Whatso war seeks, love unto war, contrary as you see. Hate fostereth war, love cannot hate, and made covet force.
The lover oft sues to his foe and findeth no remorse. Then if he hap to have a help to win his froward foe, too kind a fool I will him hold that lets such vantage go.
Well, to be short, myself will die ere I my honour stain. You know my mind, leave off to tempt your honours. Your offers are in vain.
Bethink yourself. At price enough I purchase sweet your love. Andrugio's life sufficed alone your strangeness to remove, the which I grant with any wealth that else you will require. Who buyeth love at such a rate pays well for his desire.
No, Promos, no. Honour never at value may be sold. Honour far dearer is than life, which passeth price of gold.
To buy this jewel at the full, my wife I may thee make.
For unsure hope that peerless pearl I never will forsake.
These suits seem strange at first I see, where modesty bears sway. I therefore will set down my will and answer for her stay. Fair Cassandra, the jewel of my joy, how so in show my tale seems strange to thee. The same well weighted, thou needst not be so coy. Yet, for to give thee respite to agree, I will 2 days hope still of thy consent, which if thou grant, to clear my clouds of care, clothed like a page, suspect for to prevent, unto my court some night, sweet wench, repair. Till then, adieu. Thou these my words in works performed shall find.
Farewell, my lord, but in this suit you bootless waste your wind. Cassandra, O most unhappy subject to every woe, what tongue can tell, what thought conceive, what pen thy grief can show? To whom to scourge nature, heaven and earth, do heaps of thrall ordain, whose words in waste, whose works are lost, whose wishes are in vain. That which to others comfort yields doth cause my heavy cheer. I mean my beauty breeds my bale, which many hold so dear. I would to God that kind elsewhere bestowed had this blaze. My virtues then had wrought regard, my shape now gives the gaze. This form so Promos fires with love, as wisdom cannot quench. His hot desire till he lust in Venus' seas hath drenched.
At these words, the actor playing Gannio must be ready to speak. Gannio enters. And he can't be ready to speak because I haven't given out anyone to be. My bad. I apologise. This has all gone a little bit wrong at this point. Rachael, could you be Gannio briefly, please?
Mistress Cassandra, my lord longs to hear of your good speed.
Purganio, his death alas, fierce fortune hath decreed.
His death, God forbid, all his hopes should turn to such success. For God's sake, go and comfort him. I sorrow his distress.
I needs must go, although with heavy cheer.
Sir, your sister Cassandra is here.
And exit Gannio. Andrugio out of prison in Act 3, Scene 4. Cassandra on the stage.
My Cassandra, what news, good sister, show?
All things conclude thy death, Andrugio. Prepare thyself to hope it were in vain.
My death? Alas, what raised this new disdain?
Not justice will in wicked promise sure.
Sweet, show the cause. I must this doom endure?
If thou dost live, I must my honour lose. Thy ransom is to Promos' fleshly will that I do yield, than which I rather choose with torments sharp myself he first should kill. Thus I am bent, thou seest thy death at hand. Oh, would my life would satisfy his ire, then Cassandra then would cancel thy soon thy band.
May it be a judge of his account, can spot his mind with lawless love or lust. But more, may he doom any fault with death, when in such fault he finds himself unjust. Sister, that wise men love we often see, and where love rules, gainst thorns doth reason spurn. But whoso loves, if he rejected be, his passing love to peevish hate will turn. Dear sister, then, note how my fortune stands, that promised love, the like is oft in use, and sith he crave this kindness at your hands, think this, if you his pleasure do refuse, I, in his rage, poor wretch, shall sing Peccavi. Here are two evils, the best hard to digest, but whereas things are driven into necessity, there are we bid, of both evils choose the least.
And of these evils, the least I hold is death, to shun whose dart we can no mean devise. Yet honour lives when death hath done his worst. Thus fame than life is of far more enterprise.
Nay, Cassandra, if thou thyself submit to save my life, to promise fleshly will, justice will say, thou dost no crime commit, for in forced faults is no intent of ill.
How so the intent is construed in offence? The proverb says that 10 good turns lie dead, and 1 ill deed 10 times beyond pretense. By envious tongues report abroad doth spread. Andrugio so, my fame so valued be, despite well lays my crime, but not the cause. And thus, although I fain would set thee free, poor wench, I fear the grip of slander's paws.
Nay, sweet sister, more slander would ensue, your spotless life, to reave your brother's breath, when you have power to enlarge the same. Once in your hands doth lie my life and death, way that I am, the self-same flesh you are. Think I once gone, our house will go to rack. No forced faults for slander need not care. Look you for blame, if I'd quail through your lack, consider well my great extremity. If otherwise this doom I could revoke, I would not swear for any jeopardy to free thee, wench, from this same heavy yoke. But I see, else no way saves my life, and yet this hope may further thy consent. He said he may perchance make thee his wife, and 'tis likely he cannot be content with one night's joy. If love he after seeks, and I discharged, if thou aloof then be, before be lose thyself, so that he leaks. No doubt but he to marriage will agree.
And shall I stick to stoop to Promos' will, since my brother enjoyeth life thereby? No, although it doth my credit kill, ere that he should myself would choose to die. My Andrugio, take comfort in distress. Cassandra is won by Fonsum great to pay. Such care she hath, such thy thraldom to release, as she consents her honour for to slay. Farewell, I must my virgin's weeds forsake, and like a page to Promos lewd repair.
My good sister, to God I thee betake, to whom I pray the comfort change thy care.
And there, probably it is where the exit should live. It might be that Cassandra exits first, but I think it's probably just slightly early in the script. Okay, we've got quite a lot to unpack there. We've got Promos talking to Cassandra talking to her brother, various people throwing different things in different directions there. As everyone tries to persuade Cassandra to stoop, shall we use that term the player's thrown forward. Lois, then Rachael. Lois, you are currently muted, just so you know.
Yes, I just wondered. She said she has to dress like a page to go to see Promos. Did I miss something? Did you tell her at some point that was how she should?
He told her to do that.
Oh.
To avoid a breath of scandal.
Oh, right.
Come disguised to the back door, basically.
Clothed like a page, suspect for to prevent.
Oh, right.
I like that.
Back door
That's
to number
very cool.
10 is always open.
Yeah. There's all sorts of negotiations going on here. Rachael, other thoughts?
No, just that in that, those negotiations, I guess you could call them, that Promos was having with her. They bring up her brother. Cassandra brings up her brother and says, that it was consent, that he had, consensual sex with this woman that he, I guess, was in love with. And at the same time, you have Promos trying to, what do you call it? I don't know. He's trying to push her to say that he has her consent when it's obvious that he really doesn't in this situation. And then I also guess that dressing as a page could be some sort of symbolic thing, that he's asking her to lower her station and come in like a servant, which is, I guess, asking her to do that unmarried would also lower her, I guess, symbolic status in this society.
It's interesting how she uses his turns of phrase against him as well. Promos goes through a certain level of preamble to his suggestion, short tale to make, and then Cassandra later, well, to be short, myself will die ere my honour stain. So it's using his own turns of phrase back at him as well. So there's something interesting going on with how her dialogue is constructed. Lynn?
I am struck by her. I'm in my perception sort of inconsistent reasoning for her refusal. At first she says, "No, my honor is more important." And in her conversation with her brother, she says basically the same thing: is that honor is more valuable than life itself. But what she means by honor, I feel like shifts a little bit, because it's not something you think at first, or I think it thought at first, is something intrinsic. It's something sort of transcendent. That honor is like a fundamental value. But then she starts to talk about reputation. It's like, my reputation will be ruined. Everybody will hear about it. There's no way that we're going to keep this secret. And then people will talk, which seems, compared to how I was thinking about her motivation earlier, a little shallow. But I think it just goes to show that the line between sort of intrinsic honor and public reputation was very fuzzy in this period.
And people are using all sorts of interesting logic with each other. I'll go to Lois, then Elizabeth, then Eric.
Yeah, and following from what you say, what What makes her agree to her brother is precisely that he says her reputation will be even worse if he dies and it's her fault. In other words, he foresees what lots of literary critics are going to say about this situation.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, speaking to what Lois and Lynn have just said, I was thinking about Cassandra, and like, I feel like she's dropped in our estimation, because I thought at the beginning that she would do anything to save Andrugio, that she would do anything in her power to help him. I think she does say some the words to that effect. But now I'm wondering, if her life was at stake, would she stoop if it was her own life? But she seems quite willing to give up Andrugio's life to maintain her honor.
I mean, she does state that she would happily give her life to save his life.
Okay.
That's not quite the same thing. But just that question of what people are, and the way Andrugio talks about, about this dressing up as a page business and for one night's joy. I mean, it's he cannot be content with one night if love, and it's just. I mean, obviously, Andrugio is not in a good place to be arguing thusly. But yeah, it's a very slippery series of conversations. None of which is comfortable. I mean, and none of which is the question of power. Promos has the more power than Cassandra. Who has more power over Cassandra and Andrugio in this particular instance? Obviously, Andrugio has a death sentence hanging over him, but he's still trying to persuade Cassandra to do things. So it's interesting, and his familial tie with her and how that functions. Eric.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's just interesting how she goes from, I would never do this, I would not be caught dead doing this, to sort of, I'm going to go dress up as a page and stuff. But also, it's kind of like, it's understandable to a degree because of the circumstances. But also, I don't know, the whole coercion thing and sort of all the men in this play are basically pushing her to sort of lose, her virginity. And, it's basically peer pressure, but not peer pressure, kind of. But also, I don't know, her brother kind of promises her, like the whole premise that he might choose to marry you and it will become lawful, which is basically her argument towards her argument for Andrugio's life. It's kind of, it seems a bit almost like a trap, which I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and the question of marriage, and if this was just a straightforward, I would like to marry you in a different context, what would the relation between Promos and Cassandra be? Once you've framed it within this context, how can you consent to marriage in an equitable term because of the power dynamic that's in play? Lois, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, what's particularly revolting is his idea that he might want to marry you if you give him a really good time. I mean, that seems to be kind of implicit, then he'll want another and then he'll want to marry you. Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on because I'm sure we've got some more cheerful, happy scenes coming up as we now have Act 3, Scene 5, and we have Phallax, and we're going to have some friends joining him in a moment. Phallax alone.
It is more than strange to see Lord Promos' plight. He frisks about as birds were in his breach. Even now he seems through hope to taste delight, and straight through fear, where he claws, it doth not itch. He museth now, straightways the man doth sing, a sight in sooth unseemly for his age. He longing looks when any news shall bring to speak with him. Without there waits a page, oh, worthy wit, fit for a judge's head, unto a man to change a shiftless maid. Wink not on me, 'twas his and not my deed. His, nay, his rule this metamorphosis made. But hold that tongue, no more of this, I pray. Non bonus est ludere cum sanctis. The quietest and the thriftiest course, they say, is not to check, but praise great men's amiss. I find it true, For soothing Promos' vein, none like myself is liked in his conceit. While favor last, then good, I fist for gain. For grace will not bite always at my bait, and as I wish, at hand good fortune see. Here comes Phallax and Gripax. Ah, but what's this? As good as fair Hansel, God grant it be, the knaves bring a woman, coram nobis.
Act 3, Scene 6, we have Phallax, Gripax, Rapax, a beadle, and one with a brown bill. They bring in Lamia and Rosko, her man. We'll see if the doubling works. It probably won't.
Tear not my clothes, my friends. They cost more than you are aware.
Ah, tush, soon you shall have a blue gown for these, take you no care. Rosko, Lynn.
I'm confused.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there's a bit of dancing between Rosko and Gripax, which I hadn't really thought about. Alan, if you could read Rosko, please.
Okay. If she took thy offer, poor knave, thy wife could stave we cold.
Well, sir, whipping shall keep you warm.
What means these knaves to scold?
Master Phallax, we find you in good time. A woman here we have brought afore you, one to be charged with many a wanton crime, which trial will with proof enough find true. A knave of hers we have stayed likewise, both to be used as you shall us advise.
What call you her name?
Lamia.
Fair dame, hereto what do you say?
Worshipful sir, myself I happy wreak, with patience that my answer you will hear. These naughty men, these words on malice speak, and for this cause ill will to me they bear. I scorn to keep their minds with money play. I mean to keep my life from open shame. Yea, if I lived as lewdly as they say, but I that knew myself unworthy shame, shrunk not to come unto my trial now. My tale is told, conceive as liketh you.
My friends, what proof have you against this dame? Speak on sure ground, lest that ye reap the shame. The wrong is great, and craves great recompense to touch her honest name without offence.
All Julio, sir, doth ring of her lewd life.
Indeed, she is known for an idle huswife.
She lies. She's occupied day and night.
To swear against her, is there any white?
No, not present, but if you do detain her, there will be found by oath some that will stain her.
I see, she is then on suspicion stayed, whose faults to search upon my charge is laid. From charge of her I therefore will set you free, myself will search her faults, if any be. A God's name, you may depart.
God be with you, sir.
In such shares as this, henceforth I will begin, for all is his in his clause that cometh in.
And exeunt a number of people.
Fair Lamia, since that we are alone, I plainly will discourse to you my mind. I think you not to be so chaste a one, as that your life this favor ought to find. No force for that. Sit that you scot-free go, unpunished, whose life is judged ill. Yet think, through love, this grace the judge doth show. And love with love ought to be answered still.
Indeed I grant, although I could reprove their lewd complaints with goodness of my life, your courtesy, your debtor doth me prove, in that you took my honest fame in strife. My answer for discharge of their report, for which good turn I at your pleasure rest, to work amends in any honest sort.
Away with honesty. Your answer then in sooth fits me as jump as a pudding in a friar's mouth.
Is a crafty child daily, but Do not.
Tush, I warrant thee, I am not so what. Your words are too hard, sir, for me to conster.
Then, to be short, your rare beauty my heart hath wounded so as, save your love become my leech, I sure shall die with woe.
I see no sign of death in your face to appear. 'Tis but some usual qualm you have, pitiful dames to fears.
Fair Lamia, trust me, I feign not. Betimes bestow some grace.
Well, I admit it so, only to argue in your case. I am married, so that to set your love on me were vain.
It sufficeth me that I may your secret friend remain.
A holy hood makes not a friar devout. He will play at small game, or he sit out.
Though for pleasure, or to prove me, these proffers you do move, you are too wise to hazard life upon my yielding love. The man is pained with present death that useth wanton pleasure.
To escape such pain, wise men these joys without suspect can measure. Furthermore, I have been, my girl, a lawyer too long, if at a pinch I cannot wrest the law from right to wrong.
If law you do profess, I gladly crave, in a cause or two, your advice to have.
Ooh, to resolve you shall command my skill. Wherefore, like friends, let's commune in goodwill.
You are a merry man, but leave to jest. Tomorrow night, if you will be my guest, at my poorhouse you shall my causes know, for good cause which I mean not here to show.
Willingly, and for that haste calls me hence, my suit till then shall remain in suspense. Farewell, client. Tomorrow look for me.
Your good welcome, sir. Your best cheer will be.
And exit Phallax.
Told you erst the nature of Phallax. Money or fair women works him as wax. And yet I must commend your sober cheer. You told your tale as if a saint you were.
Well, in secret be it said, how so I seemed divine. I feared once a blue gown would have been my shrine. But now that pain is fled and pleasure keeps his hold, I know that Phallax will my fame henceforth uphold. To entertain which guest, I will some dainty cheer prepare. Yet ere I go in pleasant song, I mean to purge my care.
And she sings.
Adieu, poor care, adieu. Go, cloysome, helpless wretch. My life to make me rue, thy forces do not stretch. Thy harbour is the heart, whom wrong hath wrapped in woe. But wrong doth take my part, with cloak of right in shoe. My faults inquiry scape, at them the judges wink. Those for my fall that gape, to show my lewdness shrink. Then, silly care, go pack, thou art no guest for me. I have and have no lack, and lack is shroud for thee.
And exit. So, following one scene of someone with power coercing somebody else for sexual favours, we have another scene doing exactly the same thing, but with someone of a different status, and that immediately asks the question of the audience: how are you reacting to two similar but different scenes, and how this plays out? Rachael.
No, I feel like in some of, there is something a little, like this is taken influence from like morality plays, but I feel like it's trying to turn some of those on their head, where Lamia or something would be used as a vice character or something like that, while being in parallel to a woman who is virtuous. But I feel like this is very much saying that it doesn't matter what type of woman you are, it's the type of system that's in front of you, because they're both, being asked to do things, and they're being put into a situation a situation that's out of their power. And even if Lamia, this is her profession, it doesn't mean that's what she wanted to. It doesn't mean that they've gotten her consent. This is still an abuse of power. It's like what I'm trying to say is like when they ask what somebody was wearing, and it doesn't really matter what they were wearing or what their reputation is, that it's on the person acting out this act.
Lynn.
Pardon me while I overthink this, because on the surface these are parallel scenes. Person in a position of authority, a woman who is in some way vulnerable, and the trafficking in her sexuality in order to resolve that. But the power dynamics are completely different, I would argue, because Cassandra is still invested in her reputation, in her chastity, her honor for honor's sake, in a sort of intrinsic way, as well as her ability to fit in society, which puts her in the much weaker position in the power dynamic. But the relationship between Lamia and Phallax, Phallax, not phallus, is actually really different. And that's emphasized by the fact that her servant says in the second scene of the play or something like, okay, here's how we get out of this problem. You go flirt with Phallax, who's the best friend of Promos, and he'll protect you. So this was her plan all along, to use her attractiveness as a bribe for Phallax to get her to protect her. So she's kind of in charge of this situation. This was her and her servant's idea all along, and Phallax is playing into her hand exactly as she hoped he would. And what puts her in that position to be the one that's got the leverage is the fact that she's given up this thing that society says is so valuable. That's her reputation. She didn't have it anymore. Everybody knows she's a courtesan. And once she's given up on having a reputation, that allows her to use her sexuality as a bargaining chip the way she wants, rather than having men try to force her into using her sexuality as a bargaining chip. So I mean, basically what this is exposing is that clinging to your chastity actually puts you in a really weak position.
It's playing the patriarchy's game in different ways. I mean, it's interesting. Cassandra was earlier talking about the curse of her beauty, and that narrative that we have about obviously it's going to lead people on, etc. And a rejection of that, whereas Lamia is playing the game. Whether the game is winnable, of course, it'll be interesting to see what the play does with that. I mean, that's the question. What the play world is doing with these interactions, as opposed to what we might, from a distance, say. You're all going to lose. Thoughts from the room? Otherwise, I'm not going to go around the room in a sort of formal final thoughts, because I think we've still got quite a lot to unpack from what we've just read, let alone trying to summarise things. So just wave at me if you have additional things to say about this scene. It's interesting. I thought Rosko was essentially in the background doing asides. That servant character just doing a sort of running commentary. So it's like almost Lamia is playing a part throughout all of this. It's a performance, and he's doing the sporting commentary of it, and how that functions. Alan.
Yeah, and I must admit, I loved some of his very cynical approach to the whole thing. He basically is. He knows how the world works and is incredibly cynical about it.
Now, we've had mentioned in chat lots of stuff. I think we should bring it into the room. We're talking about the blue gown. It will return this as a signifier of shame. for a inverted commas fallen woman. And so yes, so that's where they're talking about at the beginning, as these people are clearly manhandling her with quite roughly. The way the scene opens is appears quite violent, and threatening her with this blue gown. I should say we may see later on. Other thoughts from the room? Elizabeth.
I think the character of Phallax has been really built up and like almost glacially like added to as the players progressed, and he's become this really unlikable, really dodgy, very, very, very coercive, manipulative character who doesn't stand upon the law that he proclaims to want to uphold. He's actually, one of the characters says that for women and for something else that he will readily change his mind. And I just find it really interesting because at the beginning we saw this Phallax as this very honourable character, but now he's just changed into something really dark and destructive.
You mean Promos, I think.
Do I mean Promos?
Yeah, Phallax is his dodgy sidekick, who we knew from the beginning was
dodgy. But it's Promos it's Promos.
I think so. I think that's what.
Okay, it's Promos.
Mm. Yeah. The idea is perhaps Promos is someone who's on the surface appeared very respectable, and that there is a journey there, whereas Phallax sort of presents himself as decidedly unpleasant at the beginning, and remains decidedly unpleasant
throughout.
Helen.
Yeah, I very much got the impression reading Promos that he was a man who was hit by lust with a sledgehammer, and that it wasn't something that he normally suffered from. And that he didn't have the experience of feeding his desires. He's an innocent abroad, and this is why he's making such a mess of it, because he's not a regular predator.
He frisks about as birds were in his breech.
Yes, I mean it's a new sensation to him. I mean your regular practiced molester knows what he's doing, but I don't think Promos is. I think this is in his old age. He's suddenly been hit by lust, and he doesn't really. I mean, he's taking advice from men like Phallax.
Lois, then Rachael.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, because Promos does say in that first speech of his that he's going to be different. He's going to try to uphold the laws properly. And also Phallax, I mean, even the stage direction at the very beginning, I don't know quite what Phallax is meant to do, but he's meant to read this official document that we don't have in a particularly phony way, apparently, so that I guess he's establishing his character right from the start.
And it does seem to be that Promos is... when they're talking about, he longing looks when any news shall bring to speak with him without their waits a page. He's constantly going to the door. He's not used to this. That doesn't, of course, make it okay. That doesn't mean he has our sympathies, but it is a character note. Rachael, then Lynn.
Yeah, no, I mean, Phallax and Promos, I think they're like they have their own foil pairing to each other. And then also, to what Helen was saying, I feel like in his old age, it is the lust thing, but I feel like it could also be that he has a reputation now. And it's one of those things like between the two of them, who's going to believe that when he's had this wonderful career and all these things, that he would this once, after always upholding it, do this. And it's like, but who would believe her, kind of. where maybe with Phallax, somebody would be more likely to believe, and there would be many witnesses to how he's not on the up and up, even if he's a part of the law.
Yeah. Lynn?
Yes, I think that you could play Promos as just being extremely naive and just ill-equipped to deal with real life. I mean, he chose Phallax for his best friend. He doesn't see through Phallax. So I think that's consistent with the interpretation that he just sort of surprised by sin. He doesn't know how to handle it because he's never had to manage these kinds of emotions before. But yes, that doesn't mean that it's okay. But yeah, he's just been above it all, and now that he has to deal with being human, he doesn't have the tools.
Elizabeth, then Lois.
Yes, I don't know if we're going to do final thoughts today, but I had one, which was just, I really love the female characters in this play. I thought that they come across really beautifully, even Dalia, who's only on stage for a very short amount of time. So I'll just say that I love the female characters. I think they're really meaty for actors to get their teeth into. They have a lot of dialogue. And I also like Lamia's songs. Lamia's songs, and the fact that we have music integrated in the play as well.
Lois.
Well, yeah, I was going to say just that the idea of using blackmail on Cassandra is something that's suggested off stage by Phallax to Promos, which obviously cuts down his guilt a bit. I mean, he's really more like somebody being tempted by an evil counselor.
Yes. And it is interesting how Phallax functions in that sense as the person who maybe Promos wouldn't have taken that additional step if someone hadn't said, "Hey, it's normal, this kind of activity. We do it all the time. It'll be fine. We can keep it secret, sir." And that's how the institutional nature of this functions as well. The system is corrupt all the way down. The absent king has, in theory, put in someone at the top who's honest to root out all of the problems, and almost immediately you give him the power, it all goes horribly wrong. Nobody below is holding him to account. Eric.
I was going to say that because I've been trying to think, okay, it's similar to this play, but then also that play, and then that play, and obviously, I'm trying, I have a list of plays now that is it's very similar to that it reminded me of basically. There are moments where you kind of go, okay, this is sort of I think it was Cornelia that we did, the one where everyone's perhaps Gismund and Tancred or something. And there are so many plays where this could be inserted slightly. You could borrow characters from it, Appius and Virginia, or I actually mentioned Dr. Faustus or something in the chat because it just reminded me of that sort of slow descent into not vice exactly, but the slow descent by Faustus into hell, where he kind of goes, yes, I have all the power. Oh wait, that's not a good idea. And he only starts to realize the consequences of his act. I'm assuming here. I don't know if I don't think he will regret it, but I mean, Promos. And Cassandra is sort of, I don't know. She's interesting because she's multi-dimensional. She's not sort of just virtue, the godly virtuous Susanna, or just sort of vice like Lamia or something. She's actually got struggle, internal and external, which is quite interesting.
Sadly, that is all we have time for. If you have any additional thoughts, hold on to them. I'm sure we'll have lots to discuss as we go through this play. We'll finish part 1 tomorrow and go into part 2. You can think of this we've got 2 more sessions anyway to complete the texts and to get further on. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers in the room. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Lamia now means to live, even till she die.